Hello and welcome to another Lewisburg Community TV video. This is episode 27 and we're coming to you from the bookshop on a very rainy, cold Saturday. And today we're going to talk about travel, something we have just been dreaming about lately. Nothing, we can't go anywhere, but we're thinking about travel. So we have today, we're going to have an interview with Monisha Rajesh, whose first book around the world around India in 80 trains, and then her second book around the world in 80 trains. So we're going to talk to Monisha.
Published by Bloomsbury.
Bloomsbury, yeah, and they're gorgeous books, and so is Monisha, and she made us very envious of all her train journeys. So we'll get on to that in a moment. So I suppose travel we both love a bit of travel, and Neil, you're particularly a travel reader, more so than me, and we do have a travel section. So we're always kind of adding to it, and we're going to focus on the travel section for the next few weeks.
Well, one of the best guys who write travel books, Paul Faroo, On the Plain of Snakes was his last book, which was just published by Penguin. It's just an amazing travel around Mexico, one of the countries that I love, and that's absolutely brilliant. That's quite new.
So it's kind of that is I suppose the quintessential travel book in a way, because he travels around.
A road trip. It's a road trip.
It's a road trip, yeah, and you get to understand Mexican culture and social issues through his travel.
Yeah, and that's the new one. He did that just before lockdown.
Yeah.
There, this is an old one. I know a favourite of mine. As I walked out one midsummer's morning, it's kind of like a memoir travel book. Laurie Lee, who walked around Spain just before the Civil War, and this is one of my favourite books of all time. It's just magnificent. He's just such a fantastic writer, and after reading this, you just want to go to Spain, even though it was literally 80, 90 years ago, wherever it was when he did it.
But it's an unusual book. I know the beginning. I've never read it, but Neil's read the beginning to me a few times, and it's about how he leaves his home in Britain before, well, as you said, a long time ago, before the Second World War, and says goodbye to his mother and doesn't know that he's ever coming back. So there's that sense of travel where you go, but you don't know when you're coming back. And we don't, in a sense, have that kind of travel today anymore, because even with mobiles, we're never very far away.
He walked across Spain. Incredible book, one of my favourites of all time. And Breed.
Yeah, I said I've not read that many travel books now that I think of it. I'm sure I have through the years, but these are two I would love to read, and I have here Deirdre Murphy. I have read one of her books about Africa. This one is about encounters in Israel and Palestine, and she's just won an award, hasn't she?
The Stanford Travel Award for Lifetime Achievement.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know Deirdre Murphy, and I've probably read her stuff, but this one is about how she talks to Israelis and Palestinians in her own kind of curious way, and through that, you learn about the country and also about what's going on there. So that one's definitely one to read, and this one has also won quite a lot of awards and got a lot of publicity, and it's actually a gorgeous book, The Lost Pianos of Siberia by Sophie Roberts. It's about how we think of Siberia as this sort of godforsaken place, which it probably is. I haven't been there, but that somehow there was always music there, and somehow pianos made their way into Siberia, and this is kind of the story of that. And I suppose it's the story of regions in Russia and how things changed, and through the life of
I think
pianos.
it was. I think Stalin exiled a lot of musicians to the Siberia, and they brought their pianos with them.
Yeah, but they actually, to just even get the pianos physically to those places was a challenge.
On the train.
So on the train. Yeah. But some places don't even have trains. We're going to them anyway. This is I suppose it's a travel book with a difference. It's kind of like a social history as well as travel, but it does travel. The book does take you on a journey through Siberia.
So while we can't travel, we can at least read about it.
Definitely be one.
Right. So we're going to Monisha.
So and also I suppose we won the best bookshop in Ireland as part of the British Book Awards, and that means in Northern Ireland and Ireland we've been voted the best bookshop. We now go through to the finals, which are in May, but it has Scotland, Wales, regions in England, and we would absolutely love to win that, but we're delighted with our win so far, and we've never had so many contacts from authors and publishers.
And champagne.
With champagne, a beautiful bottle of champagne in the post from an absolutely gorgeous customer, and biscuits and books, and it's been a lovely, lovely week. So yeah, so we're on our website, tertuliabookshop.com, and all the social media for latest books and things that we're doing. And we're going to be launching our members area in the next couple of weeks, and we will have an exclusive event with an author. We have some really exciting young authors we're hoping to get on our exclusive event, so we're working on that, and we'll be back in touch. That's
Cool.
it, I think, for today. So now we're going to go over to Monisha Rajesh for Around the World in 80 Trains. Take care.
Bye-bye.
So hi, and welcome to Tertulia. And we've got Monisha Rajesh on with us today, and we're here to talk about Monisha, your lovely book Around the World in 80 Trains. So yeah, we I suppose, well, we read about your book and we decided to stock it. One, because we absolutely love train journeys, and I suppose when we were putting together our Christmas list as well of books to choose, that was one of them, because we're all dying to travel, aren't we? And
we can't travel. That's the problem.
We can't travel, and we all love trains because we want to be more climate friendly in the future. So your book kind of grabbed us, and we sold a lot of copies over Christmas and since. And your other book Around India in 80 Trains,
which we also love.
So I suppose we might start off now. Your cover kind of says a 45,000-mile adventure. So maybe if you can, in a few minutes, to tell us, about the journey, like where did you start and where did you finish, and
what inspired you to do the journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gosh, so it does start with the first book, Around India in 80 Trains, although you don't have to have read the first one to enjoy or read the second one. But that's where my sort of love of trains started back in 2010. I was never a train fan, which I'm probably not supposed to say, but when I set off and did that journey, I had absolutely no interest in trains whatsoever. I don't come from a railroading family. I didn't grow up next to train tracks or anything like that. But I wanted to travel around India for 4 or 5 months as a tourist and just see the country the way that other people do, because I'd lived there very briefly when I was, I think, about 9, and I spent a couple of years there. But like it is wherever you live somewhere, you never really get to see it as a tourist, probably until you leave, and everyone else comes through telling you all these wonderful things about it, and you think, I really must go and do that before I don't have a chance again. And every time I went to India, I just found myself going in and out, seeing family, and then coming back. And I wanted to go for a proper sort of long stint, go and do all the traveler things of visiting the Taj Mahal, to going to a Red Fort, to go to Rajasthan's deserts, seeing beaches in Kerala, to spice plantations, just doing all the fun stuff that you read about all the time. And I tried to figure out what would be the sort of most economical way of traveling around. And I realized it was just by train, because the railway network is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you'd know if you've been on some of those trains. They literally get into every nook and cranny that you can imagine, right up the mountains, all along the coast, right into the easternmost corner of India, into villages in Assam. And airplanes can absolutely not even think about getting anywhere near there. So I decided to buy myself a rail pass, and it was 3 months. I think it was 90 days, and it cost me £350, which is just kind of unimaginable anywhere else.
So cheap.
Fantastic.
So cheap. And it was second class travel. It included all my sleeper trains and quite a lot of food. And I thought, well, I've got a lot of money behind me, but I just bought my flight and I went off and I set off, and I had this very unplanned journey, but it was probably the best way to do it, because I just found myself hopping from one train to another, meeting people, getting stories from people. And by the end of that 4 months, I realized that the trains had sort of become the main character of my book, and they developed this personality that I just completely fell in love with. So when I came to do this book, the love of trains was already there, but I knew that I wanted to replicate what I did in India, but I just couldn't think of one country where I might be able to find that. I think maybe China was one option, and perhaps in Russia, but the issue for me was language. And I knew that if I was going to be able to engage with people and get those stories and, eavesdrop and find out about people's lives, I needed to be able to speak to them. And that was the problem I had. I don't speak fluent Cantonese or Mandarin or Russian. So I decided to just go for broke and just
I just do the whole lot. I can't decide which one, so I'll just go and do them all. Great.
Yeah, I thought, let me just see how far I can get. And I went to this conference travel shop in London, and they've just got the most incredible array of maps. And I bought a bunch
I
of
know
them.
it. Yeah,
Oh, it's just beautiful. And
isn't it?
I mean, you just get so much wanderlust when you walk in there. And I came back
Oh,
with
tell
the
me.
same book. And I pinned a map on the wall, and I just thought, let me see how far I can get with just trains. And I was amazed by how far the routes would take me. And I could almost get to Singapore. In fact, you could get to Singapore without leaving the overland at all, which I was just amazed by. And from then, it was fairly easy to sew together the sort of connecting trains in between. And I didn't set out with a big plan. I just thought, let me see as far as I can get, see who I can meet on board. And I'd got a sort of vaguely planned route. I had dates by which I needed to be in certain places, and things I wanted to see, or events that were taking place. And I put pins in those, literally put pins in, and then just sort of put string between each one. And then I just sat down and figured out the train routes. And there were invariably, 3 or 4 services a day that would take me between each city. And so that way I didn't need to stay really rigid. I could, arrive somewhere and think, I really love this city, I'm going to stay an extra couple of days, or, turn up somewhere and think, well, an afternoon's enough here. I'm gonna leave a bit early. And it was very doable. But I mean, I was fortunate enough to be able to I took 7 months to do the trip, because I thought, if I'm going to do this kind of adventure, it's got to be done properly. And even then, I'm sure there are parts of the book where people think I've skimmed through it, but if I put everything in, it would have probably been about 10 times the length that it
Yeah,
is.
you could do a second volume, couldn't you? That's what you were
Oh,
saying. You
I
could
know.
almost
Oh,
do volume
absolutely.
2.
And in fact, that was probably my hardest. When people have often said, what's the most difficult bit about writing that book, it was leaving out what was
Mm.
going to go in. It wasn't, putting together the stories and making sure there was enough content. There was just so much that I had to really pick and choose and sift out the bits that might have been really, great fun for me, and lovely anecdotes and things, but I needed to make sure that they would relate to my readers. And so that was really tricky. It was. I sort of felt like I was losing my baby sometimes, but
I can't leave that bit
was
out.
fun.
No, take it
It
out.
was
Well, my
so
favourite bit in the book. Well, I mean, the book's brilliant, but there's lots of lovely bits. But I love the this little bit here. I'll just read this little bit out, if it's okay.
sure.
An hour into the journey, the fourth berth was as yet unclaimed and filled with potential. It lay there, a question mark, waiting to be answered by an unknown protagonist in our story, whether it was to be occupied by a cast of characters or one solo hero of the tale. Whoever came along would change the fate of our journey. I love that. Yeah, because
Oh.
I can relate to that as well.
Yeah. Well, even if we hadn't, it's brilliant. But yeah, when we did a trip back to India with our daughter when she was about 7, we took a train from Delhi down to Chennai,
Oh,
and the
wow, that's
same.
a long journey.
Yeah, it was 2 nights and 1 day, and there was 3 of us, and there was a fourth. Obviously, exactly the same thing.
And we were
A
wondering.
and we were like, "Oh my God, he's just."
Well, we were thinking, should we just book it, so that we have the whole berth to ourselves? And then I was thinking, you know what, we don't know who's going to turn up, just like that. And it turns out that the deputy head of Indian Railways booked it, because it was first class. Yeah, first class sleeper air condition.
We did go first class air conditioning.
Yes. Yeah, and he was just amazing, because all we talked about was trains the whole time.
Wonderful.
It was incredible.
So you must have had loads of train journey talks on your journey too.
Oh, I can imagine. So it's funny that you mentioned that, actually, because I know a lot of the guidebooks will say, if you want to, just book up all the other berths, and then you get your privacy, and you get your, about luggage. But I always try and dissuade people from doing that, because you miss out.
You just don't know. It actually was one of the highlights of the whole trip, because he was just this lovely man.
Oh yeah,
I mean, and also you just get. It's that sort of serendipitous nature of train travel, where you have no idea who's going to come in. I mean, it could for better or worse, but invariably it is for better. Yeah. And you learn so much from people, and you end up striking up these amazing friendships that those fleeting friendships that you really get on trains, I think. So I always try and say to people, just go with the flow and see what happens. Don't cut yourself off from people. Yeah. Just, wait and see what happens. And I've built an entire book around conversations with people. Yeah, I definitely recommend doing it that way.
And which was your kind of favorite?
Yeah, do you have a favorite?
What was your favorite journey? Is there? I mean, can you choose one? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm often asked this, but I have different favorites for different reasons. And I think in terms of scenery, the Qinghai Railway from Shanghai to Tibet was
Mm,
definitely the best. I mean, I still think about that journey now, and
wow.
when I looked, I just remember waking up in the morning, pulling up that blackout blind, and had no idea where we were because we were in Shinning when we went to bed, and it was pitch black outside. Put the blind down, and I thought it was still sort of 3 or 4 in the morning, and I inched it up, and just this blazing sunshine came in, and once my eyes had adjusted to it, it was just this very, very almost canary yellow kind of plateau, and then just these screaming blue skies with little puffy white clouds, and then, incredible scenery. It just went on and on and on and on for miles, and there were Tibetan prayer flags strung off, the little, not yurts, they call them, I think they are called nomadic tents. And then we passed yak, we passed, rivers that had frozen, we passed the Kunlun mountains. I've just never seen scenery like that in my life, and I don't think I ever will again. But equally on board, it was just so fun. It was a massive train with all kinds of people, suffering from altitude sickness.
Yeah.
But it was, the food, the dining car was great. The change in the scenery as well. It was a 56-hour journey, and at one
Wow.
point you could be going past these what looked like the sea, because there were just so many lakes and little streams and things that you could look out of the window at one point and think you were by the ocean, and then 10-15 minutes later suddenly find yourself in these swayed kind of mountains all dusted with snow, and it was extraordinary. But in terms of food, I think the Mandovi Express in India is probably my favorite. It's almost like a rolling restaurant with these incredible hawkers shouting up the aisles every 6 or 7 minutes.
Oh, I remember.
What have they got? What have they got?
Yeah.
Like tea and clanging their coffee vats, and it's so fun. It makes me so kind of
I know.
It is. I think, yeah, I said what sort of India would be our one thing. Yeah, but
We
I
loved
suppose
it, yeah.
because we did a world tour thing, but on planes and trains. But yeah, India does stick in your mind, doesn't it? The way
so much character.
It's so, yeah.
I used to love the kids coming on board, and they'd say, "Excuse me, sir, which team?" Because they want to know what cricket team I support.
Yeah.
And
Always.
you would talk vociferously about cricket, and he doesn't even know half of what they know,
Oh no, it's one of the easiest ways to make conversation with people. Just talking about cricket, and you'll be amazed what they will come out with. It's lovely. It's great fun. It's so fun.
I know, we must get back to India when we can travel again.
On a train would be amazing. And how did you manage then in like China and stuff? I know it was difficult, but the language obviously.
Well, yeah, language was an issue. So obviously eavesdropping wasn't really worthwhile because I had no idea
Yeah,
what it was. But again, we actually got quite lucky. On one of the journeys, we met this very lovely student who was on his way home for the first time in 6 months, actually.
That's right.
His mum. Yeah. And he just took us under his wing, and he interpreted for us with the compartment, and he took us off the dining car. He explained all the menus are in Cantonese and Mandarin, and we had absolutely no idea what anything was. So invariably we just point to things and say whatever they're having looks really good, we'll have that. But he explained everything to us, and we were very fortunate, because it's not often that you do find people who are bilingual on board. Certainly not in the lesser known areas of China. But then we were also fortunate to have Google apps and things. It's amazing how much you get by with that. And there were so many different translation apps that we could download and at least hold the phone up to people who would be able to pass it around 3 or 4 people, and together they'd manage to pull something together and help you out. And that's the other lovely thing. Even if you don't speak the language, people will usually club together, and between them they'll find a way to communicate with you, whether it's little sketches in your notebook or drawing signs for you, or just through body language as well. We figured it out. We managed to get by. So yeah, I'd say to people who think about doing it, don't be put off if you don't speak the language somewhere, because you'd be surprised how much you can do without.
And I suppose, and the kindness as well, as you said.
Kindness of strangers, yeah.
The kind that you meet along the way. Yeah, I suppose you're slightly vulnerable in a way, aren't you? And when you are, people respond to that.
Yes, we definitely found that in almost everywhere we went, actually. So yeah, I was very lucky. I was very lucky to meet such great people on board. And I do find that's I do feel like it's something that's very particular to train travel. I've never really encountered that when I'm flying, where people really do sort of.
No, it's not the same. No, it's all.
It's a very
Wow.
individual
Yeah.
experience.
But how do you follow up this amazing book?
I'm actually just literally now waiting for my contract to come in for my third book.
Oh, good.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was sitting on it for quite a long time, wondering whether I could start doing trains again. But I love them so much, and during the pandemic, I thought, no, who am I kidding? I love this. So I'm actually going to do another book on night trains specifically. So I'm going to travel around to some of the places that I didn't get to do in the last two books. So there'll be a bit of, well, quite a lot of Africa, Australia, and a lot more Europe this time, because we whizzed through Europe the second book, and only really did the first chapter there because it was quite hard time-wise to be able to spend, good long stints with the rail pass that we had, and with the dates and timings I was restricted to at the beginning. So this time I'm gonna make sure that we spend a good amount of time in Europe. Also because I think now with the pandemic and how travel is going to change, I think a lot more of us are going to be looking closer to home for holidays once we can get moving, and even after everyone's vaccinated, and once things have turned around in the next couple of years and we've got better idea of what the tourism industry is looking like. I think, right, you were saying before in terms of climate change and wanting to be a bit more conscious about our footprints, I'd hope at least that people will move away from flying and short haul and budget travel to think about doing a bit more train travel.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot to be got out of it if you've got the time. Anyway.
And will you take your kids with you on some of those journeys?
Yeah, I hope to. I think I'm very keen to get them on because they both love trains. We actually live right by 8 train tracks, which since they were babies, they've been standing up against the glass and watching the trains. And in fact, one of the first things that the littlest one says is "choo choo" every time she sees them go by. So they're little women after my own heart.
Well, one thing about having a child with you on a journey like we had with our daughter, it opens up a whole new world.
That's true. Everyone talks to you even more, doesn't
it? It does, and I think the amount of conversations that we struck up with people just when we've been traveling in the UK with them is extraordinary. But also, I think in terms of sort of standard, typical travel writing, I mean, being bookshop owners, that travel sections tend to be dominated by sort of white male adventurers who
Michael Palin.
Yeah. I mean, going off on solo journeys into the jungles, and I used to often think, do you have kids?
What do you do with the kids when you go away?
Yeah.
But I think now things are changing, and there are a lot more women travel writers. And if I were to leave the kids at home, I think I'd be doing a disservice to myself and also them, because I don't want to convey that impression that you have to stop traveling when you have kids, because you don't. It's just going to be different, and the conversations will be different, and the way we can travel will be different, but no less relevant to people, I think, because there are so many families that are always looking for different ways to get around with their kids, and there's a lot to be discovered there.
Yeah, hopefully you'll inspire some families, and
hope so.
Yeah.
I think you will. It's definitely lay the groundwork for people who want to explore the possibilities of doing journeys with younger kids and what it's like. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I mean,
our daughter's 21 now, so she doesn't want to come with us anymore.
No, she's not coming on any train journeys with us.
You never know, when she's a bit older, she might suddenly decide she enjoys it. I've found myself, obviously, when I could, sort of going back to my parents a lot more than I ever thought I would when I was in my 20s.
Well, it's true. I mean, she actually went to, it was interesting, went to Berlin with some friends, and they wanted to go clubbing. This was just before kind of lockdown, and they all just wanted to go clubbing. And she hated sightseeing. We're always going on trains and going sightseeing. And then she found herself wanting to go sightseeing. She's going, nobody wanted to go. I had to go on my own. And we were like, yeah, you see, we told you.
Well, no, it's true. It's true. Once you get past sort of mid to late 20s, and you think, actually, I quite fancy staying in with a cup of tea and watching TV with mum and dad.
Yeah.
Oh, well, listen, that's brilliant.
Well, yeah, thank you. And here's your book again, Around the World in 80 Trains, which we're so jealous that you did.
Yeah, but we love, and we recommend this. Anybody who goes near the travel section, I'm like, this is the one.
They normally end up leaving with one of your books anyway.
Thank you so much. That's so kind of you.
Thank you, and we look forward to your next book. Sounds great.
Yeah, well, we'll be in touch at some stage.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, I don't even know when I'm going to get to do the travel. Hopefully next year I can do the
Yeah.
bulk.
And we have trains in Ireland as well, Nish, so
I know. Do you have sleeper services?
no.
Because if you
Oh.
did, you'd end up in the sea. It's just not big enough.
Oh, right.
Well, I suppose you could go round the whole island on the
around.
outside, and you might make a whole night's journey.
No, it wouldn't
Oh
work.
no, do you know, I hate to admit this, but I've never been to Ireland.
Oh, well, now there, you have an invite to us. When,
Yes,
when you have the next
very
book,
good.
come
Yeah,
over.
you can come and
And give us a chat.
launch it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would
we'd
love
love
it. I would
that.
absolutely love that. It would be
Okay,
wonderful.
we'll
Yes, I
say
will
thank
keep you
you.
posted. And thank you so much. It's been
No,
really
thank
fun
you.
to talk to you. Thank
Okay,
you.
Take
bye.
care now. Bye bye.